Right now, in this very moment, you're carrying something heavy. Maybe it's worry about tomorrow, regret about yesterday, or simply the weight of trying to control things that feel impossibly out of reach. What if I told you that a monk, 2,500 years ago, discovered something that could change how you carry that weight forever? Welcome to Echoes of Dharma. I'm about to share with you 6 ancient keys that have helped millions reclaim their power, not through force or struggle, but through a gentle wisdom that works with life instead of against it. These aren't abstract philosophies. They're practical tools wrapped in stories so beautiful, so true to human experience, that they've survived centuries to reach you tonight. In the next hour, you'll meet a prince who found freedom by giving everything away, a barber who became a great teacher, and a man trapped by his own fist around sweet rice. Each story carries a key that unlocks something different. But here's what makes these teachings extraordinary. They don't ask you to become someone else. They help you remember who you've always been beneath the struggle. Take a gentle breath. Let your shoulders soften. The first key is waiting just ahead, and it might surprise you. There was once a traveler walking through an ancient forest. The morning was calm, sunlight filtering through leaves, and the air filled with the quiet presence of life. Then suddenly, from the shadows, an arrow struck. The sharp sting burst into his body. This was the first arrow. No one could deny its reality. It pierced. It burned. It throbbed. This is what the Buddha called the unavoidable pain of being alive. We all know this first arrow, don't we? The illness that arrives uninvited, the loss of someone we love, the job that disappears, the relationship that ends. These arrows come without our permission, simply because we are human, living in bodies that age, in a world that changes. But then something else happens. Something that turns one wound into 1,000. The mind, startled and shaken, begins to weave stories around the pain. Why me? It cries. This isn't fair. This shouldn't have happened. I can't bear this. It will never end. These thoughts, repeated and multiplied, create a second arrow. And this one, we shoot ourselves. Think about the last time someone spoke harshly to you. The words themselves were the first arrow. A moment of sting, perhaps lasting only seconds. But then your mind took over. They don't respect me. They always do this. I'm not valued here. I should have said something back. You replayed that moment not once, not twice, but perhaps 100 times. That replay, 0, 5, that was you firing the second arrow, again and again. Here's what makes this teaching so profound. The Buddha never asked us to pretend the first arrow doesn't hurt. He didn't encourage numbness or denial. Pain is real. Bodies break. Hearts ache. Circumstances crumble. The first arrow belongs to everyone, rich and poor, young and old. No one escapes it. But the second arrow? That's different. That's the story we tell ourselves about the pain, the endless commentary, the what if and if only and always and never. And here's the remarkable truth that can change your life. This second arrow is optional. Let me show you what this looks like in your daily experience. Your phone battery dies just as you need to make an important call. First arrow, inconvenience. Second arrow, technology always fails me. This ruins everything. I'm so unlucky. Now my whole day is ruined. You see the difference? One is a fact. The other is a story that multiplies suffering. Traffic makes you late for a meeting. First arrow, you arrive behind schedule. Second arrow, I'm so irresponsible. They'll think I don't care. I always mess things up. I'm a failure. Again, one simple fact becomes a complex web of self-attack. The wisdom of the two arrows isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about learning to recognize the difference between what life delivers and what we add to it. When you feel the sting of the first arrow, you can pause and ask gently, what is actually happening right now? And what story am I adding to it? In Zen Buddhism, this awareness is called discernment. Not judgment, but clear seeing. The ability to separate the rain from our opinion of the rain, the event from our interpretation of the event. And in that separation, something extraordinary happens. The hand that holds the bow of the second arrow begins to rest. This is your first key to reclaiming your power. Not by avoiding life's inevitable arrows, but by choosing not to multiply them with stories that create unnecessary suffering. The moment you recognize the difference, you've already begun to set yourself free. Now let's look deeper into how these stories form. Because understanding this process is like having a flashlight in a dark room. Suddenly, you can see what was always there. The mind is perhaps the most gifted storyteller that has ever existed. It takes the raw material of experience and instantly weaves it into narrative. A friend doesn't text back. The mind creates an entire drama. They're upset with me. They're pulling away. I said something wrong. I always say something wrong. Notice how quickly we move from silence to certainty about rejection. But here's what's fascinating about these mental stories. They feel absolutely true in the moment. Your heart races, as if the imagined rejection were real. Your stomach tightens, as if the feared conversation had already happened. The body doesn't distinguish between what's happening and what we're telling ourselves is happening. This is both our gift and our burden as human beings. We can imagine, plan, create possibilities, But we can also torture ourselves with scenarios that exist only in our minds. A simple email lands in your inbox with the subject line, "We need to talk." Immediately, before you even open it, the story machine starts running. I'm in trouble. They're going to criticize my work. Maybe I'm getting fired. I knew this would happen. Your anxiety builds. Your shoulders tense. You might even lose sleep. Then you open the email to discover they want to discuss planning your birthday celebration. How much suffering did you experience between the assumption and the reality? How much energy was spent fighting a battle that was never actually happening? In Zen Buddhism, there's a teaching that says, the mind is like the sky, and thoughts are like clouds. Some clouds are light and wispy, barely noticeable. Others are dark and heavy, seeming to fill the entire horizon. But even the darkest storm cloud is temporary, and the sky itself remains unchanged. Your stories are those clouds. They pass through the clear awareness of your mind, 0, 5, sometimes bringing rain, sometimes bringing shade, but they are not permanent fixtures. The mistake we make is thinking we are the weather instead of the sky. Consider this. Someone cuts in front of you in line at the grocery store. The fact is simple. A person moved from one position to another. But watch how quickly the story builds. They're rude. They think they're more important than me. People have no respect anymore. The world is falling apart. From one small action, we've constructed an entire philosophy about human nature and social decline. What if instead you could pause and ask, what is the actual fact here? Someone moved positions in a line. What story am I adding? Everything about their character, their motivations, what this means about society. This pause, this gentle questioning, is where freedom lives. Not in having perfect thoughts, but in recognizing thoughts as thoughts, stories as stories, and facts as facts. When you begin to see the difference, something remarkable happens. The weight you've been carrying, the weight of all those stories, begins to lighten. You realize that most of your suffering isn't coming from what's happening to you. It's coming from the narrator in your head who never stops adding commentary. And the beautiful truth? You are not that narrator. You are the listener. The one who can choose which stories deserve your attention and which ones can simply be acknowledged and released. This is the second key to reclaiming your power. Learning to distinguish between the movie of your mind and the reality of this moment. There once lived a prince named Vesantara, known throughout his kingdom for a generosity so boundless it seemed almost reckless. His story begins with a gift that shocked the world. His kingdom possessed a magnificent white elephant, sacred and precious, believed to bring prosperity to all the land. When drought struck a neighboring kingdom and their emissaries came pleading for help, Vesantara did something unthinkable. Without hesitation, he gave them the elephant. The people were outraged. "He has doomed us all," they whispered. "What kind of prince gives away the source of our fortune?" So great was their fear that the king, Vesantara's own father, banished his son from the palace. But here's what makes this story extraordinary. Even in exile, even stripped of his royal comforts, Vesantara continued to give. He gave his possessions to wanderers. He gave food to the hungry. He gave shelter to the homeless. And eventually, in the deepest test of his character, he gave what seemed impossible to give: his own children, his beloved wife, when asked by those in need. To our modern minds, 0, 5, this might sound like a story of loss. But the Buddha saw something different in Vesantara's tale. He saw a man who had discovered the secret that eludes most of us. True security doesn't come from what we hold on to. It comes from our willingness to let go. Now, before you think this teaching asks you to give away your family, let me share what this story really reveals. The Buddha often taught through extreme examples to illuminate subtle truths. Vesantara's radical giving points to something we all struggle with: our relationship with attachment. Think about the things you hold most tightly in your life. Perhaps it's your reputation, your need to be right in arguments, your image of yourself as successful, or capable, or in control. Maybe it's material possessions, not just expensive things, but items that carry emotional weight. Or perhaps it's relationships where you grip so tightly with expectations and demands that love becomes suffocation. Here's the paradox that Vesantara understood. The tighter we grasp, the more we suffer. The more we cling, the more anxious we become about losing. Our very attempts to secure what we love often push it away. But this teaching isn't about careless abandonment. There's a profound difference between letting go and giving up. Letting go is about releasing the desperate grip. Giving up is about not caring. Vesantara didn't stop loving his family when he released them. His love became so pure, so free from selfish attachment, that it allowed for miracles. The story tells us that everything was returned to him, transformed and blessed. Now imagine a different story. One closer to home. You're holding on to resentment against someone who hurt you years ago. Every day, this anger takes up space in your mind. Every day, you replay their offense, refine your arguments, justify your position. You're convinced that letting go means they win. But what if letting go means you win? What if releasing that resentment doesn't excuse their behavior, but frees your mind to focus on what actually serves your life? Or consider how you might cling to plans. You've mapped out exactly how your career should unfold, how your relationship should develop, how your children should behave. When reality doesn't match your blueprint, you suffer. Not because life is wrong, but because you're attached to it being different than its island. This is what the Buddha called the root of suffering. Tanha, often translated as craving or attachment. Not the natural love of beauty or connection, but the desperate clinging that says, "This must be mine forever, exactly as I want it." Vesantara's wisdom teaches us that release isn't loss, it's liberation. When we stop trying to control every outcome, we discover a different kind of security. Not the brittle security of tight control, but the flexible strength of deep trust. Trust that life knows what it's doing, even when we don't understand the plan. This is your third key to reclaiming power. Recognizing that true strength often looks like letting go, not abandoning what you love, but loving it freely, without the prison of desperate attachment. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is open your hands and see what chooses to stay. But how do we actually practice this wisdom of release? How do we move from understanding the concept to living it in our daily reality? The answer lies not in dramatic gestures, but in small, consistent choices that gradually retrain the heart. Think of it like learning to uncurl a fist that has been clenched for so long you've forgotten what an open palm feels like. Start with something simple. Perhaps it's that stack of magazines you've been saving for years, telling yourself you'll read them someday, or the clothes hanging in your closet that you haven't worn in 2 years but can't bear to donate. These physical items carry emotional weight beyond their practical value. They represent security, memories, or the person we once thought we'd become. When you choose to release one small thing, notice what happens in your body. Does your chest tighten? Do stories arise about why you need to keep it? But I might need this someday. But it was expensive. But what if I regret it? These reactions are normal. They're the grip of attachment showing itself. Here's where Zen wisdom becomes practical. Instead of fighting these feelings, simply acknowledge them. I notice the fear of letting go. I notice the story about future need. Then, gently, ask yourself, what would it feel like to trust that I'll be okay without this? This practice extends far beyond material possessions. Consider the art of releasing expectations in your relationships. Perhaps you've been waiting for an apology that may never come, or expecting someone to change in ways they've shown no inclination toward. Each day, you hold on to these expectations. You carry their weight. What would it mean to love someone without needing them to be different? Not giving up on healthy boundaries, but releasing the exhausting project of trying to control their choices. This kind of letting go often feels counterintuitive because we've been taught that love means holding tight. But sometimes the deepest love is expressed through the courage to hold loosely. There's also the practice of releasing resentment. Not because forgiveness is a moral obligation, but because carrying anger is like holding a burning coal, hoping to throw it at someone else. You can't hurt them without first burning your own hand. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior. It means choosing your own freedom over the familiar weight of grievance. It means saying, I'm no longer willing to let your past actions control my present peace. Perhaps most challenging is learning to release control over outcomes. You can work diligently, love fully, plan carefully, but ultimately, results unfold according to conditions beyond your influence. This isn't fatalism. It's the wisdom of doing your part while holding the outcome lightly. When you practice letting go in these small ways, you begin to discover something remarkable. The space that opens up isn't empty. It's full of possibility. Where there was clinging, there's now flexibility. Where there was fear, there's now trust. Where there was the exhaustion of control, there's now the ease of flow. This is the fourth key. Practicing release, not as loss, but as making space for what wants to emerge in your life. Each small letting go prepares you for the larger releases that wisdom inevitably calls for. There was once a young man who lived as if tomorrow would never come. He filled his days with pleasures, his nights with distractions, and his pockets with borrowed coins. People admired his carefree spirit, saying, "Look how he enjoys life without worry." But beneath the laughter, debts were gathering like storm clouds. Each loan led to another. Each promise was made with easy words, 0, 5, then forgotten in the haze of temporary pleasure. The young man's restless heart kept chasing the next thrill, always believing that more excitement would drown out the growing unease within him. Soon, creditors began to knock. Gentle reminders became stern demands. Still, he tried to ignore the mounting pressure, telling himself that somehow, tomorrow, he would find a way. But tomorrow kept arriving with empty hands. Finally, overwhelmed and desperate, he sought counsel from a wise elder. The old man listened without judgment as the young man poured out his despair. "I feel trapped," he confessed. "Every path seems blocked. I don't know how to live anymore." The elder's response was gentle but direct. "Debt is like a fire. If you continue to feed it, it will consume you. If you starve it, it will weaken. You cannot put out a blaze by adding more wood. You must stop feeding the flames and begin, slowly and steadily, to repay what you owe." These words pierced the young man's heart because they revealed a truth he had been avoiding. His problem wasn't just the weight of what he owed, but the blindness with which he had been living. His endless pursuit of pleasure, his habit of pushing responsibility into an imaginary future, these were the real chains that bound him. In Buddhism, this moment of recognition is called right view, 0, 5, seeing reality as it actually is, not as we wish it were. The young man's transformation began not with a dramatic change, but with the simple courage to stop running from the truth. Now, you might think this story is only about money, but it reflects something much deeper. We all carry debts of various kinds. Some are to other people, promises we've made but haven't kept, conversations we've avoided, apologies we owe but haven't offered. Some debts are to ourselves, the self-care we've neglected, the dreams we've abandoned, the rest we desperately need but keep postponing. The pattern is the same. We borrow against our future well-being, telling ourselves we'll address the cost later. We stay in jobs that drain our spirit, promising ourselves we'll find something better someday. We neglect our health, assuming our bodies will forgive us indefinitely. We avoid difficult conversations, hoping problems will resolve themselves. But avoidance compounds like interest on a loan. The longer we wait, the heavier the burden becomes. The Buddha taught that right action begins with right view. We cannot solve problems we refuse to see clearly. The young man's freedom didn't come from escaping his debts, but from turning toward them with honest eyes. He stopped borrowing more. He found work, humble though it was. He faced his creditors with honesty, 5, promising only what he could deliver. This kind of honesty requires tremendous courage, because it means giving up the stories we tell ourselves to avoid discomfort. I'm too busy to exercise becomes I prioritize other things over my health. They wouldn't understand becomes I'm afraid of their reaction. I don't have time becomes I haven't made this a priority. But here's what the young man discovered, and what you can discover too. Honesty, even painful honesty, is liberating. When we stop spending energy maintaining false stories, we have that energy available for actual solutions. When we face our debts, financial, emotional, spiritual, we can finally begin to address them. This doesn't mean harsh self-judgment. The elder didn't shame the young man for his past choices. He simply showed him a path forward. True accountability is compassionate accountability. It acknowledges mistakes without drowning in guilt. It faces reality without losing hope. This is your fifth key to reclaiming power. The willingness to see your life clearly, without the filters of wishful thinking or defensive stories. To acknowledge what you owe, to others, to yourself, to your own potential, and to begin the patient work of repayment. Freedom doesn't come from having no debts. It comes from facing them with courage and taking the next right step. In the ancient kingdom of Kosala, 5, there lived a wise queen named Malika. One evening, as shadows grew long and the palace settled into quietude, her husband, King Pasenadi, asked her a question both simple and profound. "Tell me, Malika," he said, "who is the person you love most in all the world?" Perhaps he expected her to speak his name, or mention their children, or honor her parents who had raised her with such care. But Queen Malika, with calm eyes and steady voice, gave an answer that surprised him. "My lord," she said gently, "there is no one I love more than myself." The king was taken aback. Was his wife selfish? Had he misjudged her character? But as he looked into her face, he saw no arrogance, no coldness. He saw only clarity. Still puzzled by her words, he went to the Buddha seeking understanding. The Buddha smiled and affirmed the queen's wisdom. "She speaks the truth," he said. "Each person holds themselves most dear, though they may not admit it. And from this recognition comes profound understanding. If we truly cherish ourselves, we must treat ourselves with kindness, care, and respect. When we do so, our kindness naturally extends to others." This teaching challenges everything our culture tells us about selflessness and virtue. We've been taught that thinking of ourselves is somehow wrong, that good people always put others first. But Queen Malika understood something deeper. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Think about the safety instructions on an airplane. Put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. This isn't selfishness. It's practical wisdom. If you pass out from lack of oxygen, you cannot help anyone. If you collapse from exhaustion, neglect your health, or run yourself into the ground, what quality of care can you offer to those you love? Yet many of us operate from a place of self-depletion. We say yes when we mean no, give when we have nothing left to give, and criticize ourselves with a harshness we would never direct toward a friend. We mistake self-neglect for virtue and wonder why our relationships feel strained, why our work feels forced, why our generosity carries an edge of resentment. In Buddhism, there's a practice called metta, or loving kindness meditation. It begins not with sending love to others, but with offering it to yourself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. Only after establishing this foundation of self-compassion do you extend these wishes outward. This isn't because you matter more than others, but because you are the instrument through which your love flows. A violin with broken strings cannot make beautiful music, no matter how skilled the musician. A heart that has forgotten how to be gentle with itself struggles to offer genuine gentleness to the world. Consider how you speak to yourself throughout the day. When you make a mistake, what voice rises up? Is it understanding and encouraging, or harsh and critical? When you're struggling, do you offer yourself the same patience you'd give to a dear friend? Or do you demand perfection and berate yourself for being human? Queen Malika's wisdom isn't about becoming narcissistic or indifferent to others. It's about recognizing that self-care is the foundation of all genuine care. When you treat yourself with respect, you model respect. When you set healthy boundaries, you teach others how to treat you. When you speak to yourself with kindness, that kindness becomes your natural language with others. The paradox is beautiful. The more truly you love yourself, the more love you have available for others. Not from a place of overflow and abundance, rather than depletion and duty. Your care becomes sustainable because it springs from a well that you actively maintain, rather than a reservoir you constantly drain. This is your sixth key to reclaiming power. Understanding that loving yourself isn't the opposite of loving others. It's the prerequisite. You are not being selfish when you rest, set boundaries, or treat yourself with the kindness you deserve. You are being wise. You are ensuring that your love can flow freely and genuinely for years to come. In the time of the Buddha, 5, there lived a man named Upali who was not a nobleman or a scholar. He was a barber, trained in the humble craft of grooming and caring for others. His place in society was modest, yet his mind was sharp, perhaps too sharp for his own good. He was known for his quick wit and his habit of challenging those who seemed wiser than himself. One day, young princes from noble families decided to renounce their wealth and follow the Buddha as monks. Before leaving the palace, they wished to honor their barber Upali with a gift, the fine clothes and ornaments they no longer needed. Upali set out to find the Buddha, intending to offer these treasures on behalf of the princes. But when Upali reached the Buddha's presence, something unexpected stirred within him. Looking upon the calm figure of the teacher, feeling the quiet strength of the monastic community, a longing arose in his heart. Though he had been born into a lowly trade, though he had never received the education of nobles, he too wished to walk the path of truth. The princes were startled. How could their servant become a monk alongside them? Some felt embarrassed at the thought of standing as equals with a man of such humble birth. They whispered their concerns, but the Buddha remained unmoved. The Buddha looked at Upali and saw not his social rank, but his sincerity. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He ordained Upali first, 5, before all the princes. Let them bow to him as their elder, the Buddha said gently. In this way, they will bow to humility itself and loosen their pride. But Upali's journey was far from over. His sharp mind, once used for clever arguments, now had to learn a different way. Under the Buddha's guidance, he began to practice something much more difficult than winning debates. He learned to listen in order to understand rather than to respond. This transformation reveals something profound about how wisdom actually enters a life. We often think intelligence means having quick answers, sharp comebacks, or the ability to prove our point. But true wisdom requires something else entirely: the willingness to not know, to remain open, to let our certainties soften. In Zen Buddhism, there's a concept called beginner's mind or shoshin. It refers to approaching each moment with the freshness of someone encountering it for the first time. The expert's mind is closed to new possibilities because it already knows the answers. The beginner's mind is spacious, curious, ready to be surprised. Consider how this plays out in your own interactions. When someone shares an opinion that differs from yours, what's your first impulse? To listen deeply or to formulate your counterargument? When you encounter a problem, do you rush to apply what you already know, or do you pause to consider what you might be missing? 2.0 Upali discovered that his greatest asset wasn't his cleverness, but his willingness to be taught. As his humility deepened, his capacity for wisdom expanded. Eventually, he became so trusted in his understanding that the Buddha appointed him the guardian of the monastic rules, not because he was born to authority, but because he had learned to listen with both intelligence and humility. The lesson is clear but challenging. In a world that rewards quick opinions and confident assertions, wisdom often requires the courage to say, "I don't know," or "help me understand." It requires setting aside the need to be right in favor of the desire to learn. This is the seventh key to reclaiming your power. Recognizing that true strength lies not in having all the answers, but in maintaining the openness to receive new understanding. Like Upali, we discover that when we stop defending what we think we know, we create space for wisdom to enter. And sometimes, that wisdom comes from the most unexpected sources. In the bustling city of Rajagaha, where merchants called out their wares and nobles paraded in silk, lived a man named Super Buddha. He was not welcomed in the busy streets, nor invited to gatherings. For Super Buddha was afflicted with leprosy, a condition that marked him as untouchable in the eyes of society. Wherever he walked, people turned away, children whispered, adults crossed to the other side of the road. His days were filled with loneliness, surviving by begging for scraps at the edges of the marketplace, often ignored, often despised. Yet within Super Buddha lived the same longing that dwells in every human heart. The desire to be seen, the desire to be valued, the desire to find peace. One morning, word spread through the city that the Buddha had arrived and was giving teachings nearby. Crowds gathered eagerly, pushing close to hear this teacher whose reputation had reached distant lands. Super Buddha, hearing the commotion, felt a spark of curiosity. But he hesitated. How can I approach? He thought. Who would want me near? Still, something in him, perhaps the last ember of hope, urged him forward. He made his way to the gathering, keeping to the edges, trying not to draw attention. But the crowd was so dense he could not see, so trembling with both fear and courage. He stepped closer until he reached the very front. Some gasped at his appearance, others frowned. But before anyone could drive him away, The Buddha looked up and met his eyes. In that gaze, something extraordinary happened. The Buddha did not recoil. He did not see only disease or poverty. He saw a human being equal in dignity to all others. With calm voice, the Buddha began to teach, speaking not lofty doctrines for nobles, but words simple and direct, 5, aimed at Buddha's heart. As Buddha listened, something shifted within him. For the first time in years, someone was speaking to him, not about him. For the first time, he felt that his life mattered. In that moment of being truly seen and respected, his mind opened. The story tells us that right there, sitting among nobles and beggars, merchants and monks, Buddha awakened to profound truth. His disease had not defined him. His poverty had not diminished him. He discovered within himself a dignity that no insult could erase, a worth that existed independent of others' opinions. This story challenges us to examine how we see others. In our daily encounters, do we look past appearances to recognize the fundamental dignity in each person? Or do we, like the crowd in Rajagaha, make quick judgments based on what we observe on the surface? Consider the person who serves your coffee, who cleans the office building, who struggles with addiction, who speaks with an accent different from yours. What do you see first? Their function, their apparent challenges, their differences from you? Or do you recognize, as the Buddha did, the same spark of awareness, the same capacity for wisdom, the same longing for happiness that lives in every human heart? In Buddhism, there's a teaching about Buddha nature, the idea that every being possesses an inherent potential for awakening, 5, regardless of their circumstances. Like a jewel covered in mud, this essence may be obscured but never destroyed. Buddha's transformation reveals this truth beautifully. Awakening doesn't depend on perfect conditions, pristine health, or social status. It depends on recognition, being seen for who you truly are, beneath all the temporary conditions of life. But this teaching isn't just about seeing others clearly. It's also about seeing yourself. Perhaps you carry labels that feel limiting. Too old, not educated enough, damaged by past mistakes, unworthy of respect or love. Buddha's story whispers to these wounded places in your heart. Your circumstances do not determine your capacity for wisdom, peace, or transformation. This is the 8th key, learning to see the inherent dignity in yourself and others, beyond all the surface differences that seem to divide us. When we recognize this common ground of human worth, compassion becomes natural, judgment softens, and like Buddha, we discover that we are far more than the labels life has given us. Long ago, in a quiet forest where ancient trees touched the sky, there lived 4 unlikely companions: a bird, a rabbit, a monkey, and an elephant. At first, they were not friends at all. Each believed themselves the most important, and their pride created constant quarrels. The elephant boasted of his size and strength. The monkey bragged about his cleverness and agility. The rabbit claimed his swiftness made him superior. Even the small bird reminded them he could soar above them all, touching the very sky. Their arguments troubled the forest, and other creatures avoided their company. One day, as their bickering grew loud, the bird asked a simple question: "How shall we know who deserves respect? Perhaps the one who has been here longest should guide us." The others agreed, and they each shared their memory of the great tree beneath which they often gathered. The elephant said, "When I was young, this tree was already as tall as my shoulder. I remember sheltering in its shade." The monkey replied, "I remember when I could leap over it, for it was then only the height of a bush." The rabbit spoke next. "I recall when it was a tender sapling, so small I could nibble its leaves while standing." Then the bird lowered his head and said softly, "I remember more. Long before it sprouted, I ate fruit from another tree nearby. When I flew across this field, I dropped a seed upon the soil. That seed became this very tree." The forest fell silent. In that moment, the elephant, monkey, and rabbit saw the bird with completely new eyes. They realized that while strength, agility, and speed had their place, 5, the bird's simple act had given rise to the life they all now enjoyed. Their quarrel dissolved instantly. They bowed to the bird, not in submission, but in gratitude. From that day forward, they lived in harmony. The bird rode upon the rabbit's back, the rabbit upon the monkey upon the elephant. Together, they moved as one, each supporting the others, showing the forest what cooperation could create. This ancient story reveals a truth that transforms how we see our daily lives. Everything you enjoy today rests upon countless unseen contributions. The food on your table traveled through many hands before reaching you. The roads you drive were built by workers whose names you'll never know. The electricity powering your home flows from systems maintained by people working while you sleep. Even your thoughts and insights arise from a web of connection. The words you speak were taught to you by others. The ideas that inspire you were planted by teachers, authors, friends, strangers whose casual comments sparked something within you. Like the great tree that grew from a single seed dropped in flight, your life flourishes through the gifts of others. In Buddhism, this understanding is called interdependence. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises through relationship, through countless causes and conditions, weaving together. When we truly see this, 5, gratitude becomes as natural as breathing. But here's what makes this wisdom practical. Recognizing our interconnectedness dissolves the illusion that we must compete to survive. Like the four friends, we discover that supporting others actually supports ourselves. When we contribute to others' success, we strengthen the entire web of connection that sustains us all. Consider how this changes your approach to relationships. Instead of asking, "What can I get from this person?" you might ask, "How can I contribute to their flourishing?" Instead of competing for limited resources, you recognize that abundance flows when everyone's gifts are honored. This is the ninth key to reclaiming your power. Understanding that your strength multiplies when it's shared, and your success is intimately connected to the success of those around you. Like the four friends beneath the great tree, we thrive not despite our dependence on others, but because of it. In gratitude, we find the foundation of genuine community. In a village at the edge of a vast forest, there lived many animals who needed to cross a swift river that divided their land. The water was deep and dangerous, impossible to wade through safely. So together, they built a bridge of bamboo and vines, light but sturdy, connecting both banks. They used this bridge with care, each creature waiting their turn, knowing that patience kept the bridge strong. One morning, a restless monkey approached. Agile and quick by nature, he disliked waiting. He saw the line of animals moving slowly across. Deer, birds, even a tortoise making its deliberate way. "Why so slow?" the monkey muttered. "This bridge is strong enough. Why not run across quickly and be done with it?" Ignoring the rhythm of the group, he leaped onto the bridge, racing forward with wild energy. His hands tugged at vines. His feet pounded the bamboo. He swung and pulled and shook the structure as if it were a playground. The other animals froze in alarm as the bridge swayed and creaked under the strain. Halfway across, the monkey jumped up and down, eager to prove his speed. But his haste had weakened the knots. With a sudden crack, the bridge gave way beneath him. The monkey fell into the rushing water, barely managing to swim to shore, exhausted and ashamed. Meanwhile, the turtle had been making his way across with a different approach entirely. Unlike the monkey, he did not rush. His steps were measured, each one placed with care. He paused often, adjusting his weight, ensuring the surface held steady beneath him. When the bridge collapsed, the turtle was still safely on the bank, watching quietly as the monkey struggled in the current. The turtle did not scold or judge. He simply turned to the other animals and said, 0, 5. Strength is not in speed. What is built with patience endures. What is crossed with care reaches the other side. This simple story contains the essence of what the Buddha called the middle way. Not the path of extreme effort that burns itself out, nor the path of careless inaction, but the balanced approach that sustains progress over time. In our culture of instant everything, we often embody the monkey's approach. We want immediate results, rapid transformation, quick fixes for complex problems. We push harder when things don't change fast enough, add more pressure when we meet resistance, and wonder why our efforts collapse beneath us. Consider how this plays out in your own life. Perhaps you decide to change your health habits. On Monday, you commit to exercising 2 hours daily, eating perfectly, meditating for an hour. By Wednesday, the intensity is unsustainable. By Friday, you've abandoned the effort entirely, convinced you lack willpower. But the problem wasn't willpower. It was approaching change like the monkey approached the bridge. The turtle's wisdom suggests a different approach. What if you started with 10 minutes of walking? What if you added one healthy meal rather than revolutionizing your entire diet? What if you meditated for just 2 minutes consistently before trying longer sessions? Small steps, taken regularly, build bridges that can carry you across any distance. This principle applies to relationships, work projects, creative endeavors, and spiritual growth. The dramatic gesture that exhausts you in a week serves you less than the small action repeated for months. Consistency trumps intensity when it comes to lasting change. But the middle way isn't just about pace. It's about avoiding extremes in all directions. Just as the monkey's frantic energy was destructive, so too would complete passivity fail to cross the river at all. The wisdom lies in finding the sustainable middle ground. Engaged but not frantic, committed but not obsessed, persistent but not rigid. In Buddhism, the Buddha discovered this middle path through his own extremes. He had lived as a pampered prince and later as an ascetic who nearly starved himself to death. Neither extreme led to awakening. Only when he found the balanced way, neither indulgent nor punishing, did wisdom arise. This is the 10th key to reclaiming your power. Understanding that sustainable transformation comes not from dramatic efforts that burn out, but from consistent, balanced actions that you can maintain over time. Like the turtle crossing the bridge, you may not arrive as quickly as you'd like, but you will arrive whole, grounded, and ready for whatever lies on the other side. Patience is not a limitation, it's a superpower. There once lived a man named Bahia who devoted his life to extreme spiritual practices. He wore only rough bark cloth, lived by the sea, and followed strict disciplines that earned him the reverence of many. People bowed to him, called him holy, and Bahia began to believe their praise. Surely I am among the most advanced spiritual seekers, he thought. But beneath his certainty, an unease lingered. For all his effort, for all the respect he received, true peace remained elusive. One night, In a moment of profound clarity, he realized that all his disciplines were mere performance, bark cloth on the body, but not freedom in the heart. Driven by this recognition, he set out immediately to find the Buddha. When he finally located him, walking through the streets, collecting alms, Bahia fell to his knees in desperation. "Lord, please teach me now. I may not live much longer. Teach me before it's too late." The Buddha saw the genuine urgency in Bahia's heart. Right there, in the middle of the busy street, he offered perhaps the most direct teaching ever recorded. "When you see, let there be only what is seen. When you hear, let there be only what is heard. When you sense, let there be only what is sensed. When you know, let there be only what is known." In this way, there is no you in connection to that. There is no you apart from that. This, just this, is the end of suffering. These words cut through Bahia's complicated spiritual seeking like lightning through clouds. In that instant, he understood. All his life, he had been adding layers to simple experience, stories to sights, judgments to sounds, interpretations to sensations. Freedom lay not in adding more spiritual practices, but in stripping away the commentary, the analysis, the constant mental narration. This teaching points to the very heart of Zen practice. Most of the time, we don't actually experience life directly. We experience our thoughts about life. We see a sunset and immediately think, beautiful, but not as beautiful as yesterday's. We hear music and instantly compare it to something else. We taste food while planning the next meal. Layer upon layer of mental activity separates us from the simple reality of what's actually happening. The Buddha's instruction to Bahia was radical in its simplicity. Just see the seeing, hear the hearing, sense the sensing. No extra narrator needed. No additional commentary required. No special spiritual identity to maintain. Try this right now, wherever you are. Notice one sound around you, just the sound itself, without labeling it as pleasant or unpleasant, loud or soft, familiar or strange. Can you hear the sound without the story about the sound? This is what the Buddha meant by only what is heard. Or notice the sensation of breathing. Not thinking about breathing, not analyzing whether you're breathing correctly, not using breath as a tool for anything else. Just the simple fact of air moving in and out. This is only what is sensed. This practice isn't about achieving some special state. It's about recognizing the extraordinary ordinariness of this moment, exactly as it island. Without the burden of past and future, without the weight of judgment and comparison, there is just this, pure experiencing. The story tells us that Bahia awakened completely in that moment. His years of seeking ended not in a monastery or through elaborate rituals, but in a busy street through the simple instruction to stop adding extra layers to reality. This is the 11th key to reclaiming your power. Learning to meet each moment with pure awareness, without the constant commentary of the thinking mind. Not pushing away thoughts when they arise, but not mistaking them for reality either. Just this, just now, just what is actually here, beneath all the stories we tell ourselves about it. In the ancient city of Savatthi lived a wealthy merchant named Anathapindika, whose name itself meant the one who feeds the helpless. He had earned this title not through inheritance or accident, but through a generosity so consistent that it had become his identity. Wherever hunger existed, he provided food. Wherever illness struck, he offered medicine. Wherever children were abandoned, he created shelter. One day, while traveling to a distant town, Anathapindika heard people speaking of the Buddha, a teacher whose words brought peace to restless hearts. Something stirred within him, a longing he couldn't quite name. At dawn the next morning, he set out to meet this teacher. Their conversation was quiet, but each word seemed to reach places in his heart that had never been touched. By the end of their meeting, Anathapindika knew with absolute certainty this teaching was what the world most needed. He would do everything in his power to support it. Returning to Savatthi, he searched for a place where the Buddha and his followers could stay. He found a magnificent grove belonging to Prince Jeta, filled with ancient trees and peaceful shade, perfect for contemplation and teaching. But when he approached the prince about purchasing it, Jeta laughed. "I will only sell if you cover every inch with gold coins," he said, thinking it an impossible jest. To his amazement, Anathapindika agreed. He returned with wagons of gold, spreading coins across the earth until the grove floor shimmered like a golden sea. Prince Jeta, moved by such extraordinary devotion, softened his heart. "Keep your gold," he said. "Let me share in this gift. I will donate the trees. 5. You may donate the land." Together, they created what became known as Jetavana, the monastery where the Buddha would spend many years teaching, touching countless lives with wisdom. But here's what makes this story remarkable. Anathapindika didn't give to be remembered or praised. He gave because he understood that true wealth flows when it moves, stagnates when it's hoarded. This understanding reveals something profound about the nature of generosity. We often think giving depletes us, that we must guard our resources carefully or risk having nothing left. But Anathapindika discovered what neuroscience now confirms. Generous actions create what researchers call a helper's high. Giving literally transforms the giver's brain chemistry, increasing happiness and reducing stress. Yet true generosity extends far beyond material gifts. Consider the generosity of attention, really listening when someone speaks, without planning your response or checking your phone. or the generosity of patience, allowing others to move at their own pace without rushing them. The generosity of encouragement, offering words that strengthen rather than diminish. These gifts cost nothing but presence, yet they create ripples that extend far beyond the moment of giving. The person who feels truly heard may pass that gift of listening to another. The child who receives patient guidance may grow to become a patient teacher. The friend who receives encouragement may become a source of strength for others. Like the golden grove that provided shelter for generations of seekers, your small acts of generosity create spaces where others can flourish. You may never see the full impact of your giving, but it ripples outward, creating conditions for wisdom, compassion, and peace to take root in ways you can't imagine. This is the 12th and final key. Understanding that generosity is not about depleting yourself, but about allowing the abundance within you to flow naturally. When you give with wisdom and joy, you don't become less. You become a conduit for the endless circulation of goodness in the world. And so we come to the quiet place, where all these stories converge, where ancient wisdom meets this present moment, where the voices of princes and barbers, queens and outcasts, animals and humans speak as one. Through our journey together, we have discovered 12 keys to reclaiming the power that has always been yours. Not power over others, not power to control outcomes, but the quiet strength to meet life with wisdom, compassion, and inner freedom. We began with the 2 arrows, learning to distinguish between the pain that life delivers and the suffering we add through our stories. This fundamental recognition opens space where healing can begin. We explored the weight of the narratives we tell ourselves, 0, 5, discovering how much of our distress comes not from events themselves, but from the commentary running in our minds. Through Vesantara's boundless giving and the monkey trapped by sweet rice, we learned the wisdom of release, that true security comes not from grasping, but from the courage to let go. We practice this letting go in small ways, discovering that each release creates space for new possibilities to emerge. The young man drowning in debt and young Rahula with his water basin taught us about facing truth with courage, showing us that honesty, however uncomfortable, is the foundation of genuine freedom. Queen Malika surprised us with her wisdom about self-compassion, reminding us that we cannot truly love others if we neglect ourselves. Upali the barber showed us that humility is not weakness, but the gateway through which wisdom enters. When we release the need to be right, we create room to learn and grow. Super Buddha, the leper, revealed that dignity exists in every being, regardless of circumstances, and that true sight looks beyond surface appearances to recognize the light in everyone. The 4 friends beneath the great tree demonstrated our profound interconnectedness, showing how gratitude transforms competition into cooperation. The monkey and turtle crossing the bridge taught us about the middle way, that sustainable change comes through balanced effort, not dramatic gestures that burn out quickly. Bahia's instant awakening pointed us toward pure awareness, the ability to experience this moment without the constant commentary of the thinking mind. And finally, Anathapindika's Golden Grove showed us that generosity is not depletion but circulation, a way of participating in the endless flow of abundance. Each key builds upon the others, creating a path that spirals inward toward the truth you have always carried. That your peace does not depend on external circumstances, that your worth is not determined by others' opinions, that your freedom lies not in controlling life, but in responding to it with wisdom. These are not teachings to master once and set aside. They are companions for the journey, gentle reminders to return to again and again. Some days, you may need the clarity of the two arrows. Other days, the courage to face truth, or the patience of the middle way. Trust that the teaching you need will arise when you need it. The Buddha said that each person must walk their own path to freedom. These stories are not prescriptions, but invitations, not rules, but possibilities. They whisper rather than command, suggest rather than demand. They remind you that the power to transform your experience has never left you. It was only temporarily obscured by the noise of a busy world and a restless mind. Now, as our time together draws towards stillness, take with you this gentle truth. 1, 0. You are more resilient than you know, more wise than you believe, more connected than you imagine. The same awareness that awakened in Bahia on a busy street lives within you. The same compassion that flowed through Queen Malika flows through you. The same courage that guided Buddha through rejection guides you now. May these teachings rest gently in your heart, not as burdens to carry, but as seeds planted in the fertile soil of your own experience. As you return to the rhythm of your days, remember that transformation is not a destination, but a continuous unfolding. Each moment offers a fresh invitation to choose wisdom over reactivity, compassion over judgment, presence over distraction. The stories we have shared tonight are not mine or yours alone. They belong to the countless generations who have walked this path before us, and to those who will walk it after we are gone. In listening, you have joined this ancient conversation between wisdom and suffering, between fear and freedom. If these words have offered you even a moment of peace, consider sharing that gift with others. Not through preaching or teaching, but simply through the way you move through the world, with greater kindness, deeper patience, more open hands. From all of us at Echoes of Dharma, may your path be blessed with clarity. May you find the courage to face whatever arises. May you discover the joy that comes from living with an awakened heart. Until we meet again in the space between words, where silence speaks and wisdom listens, Rest well. The echo continues.